Welcome to the show. I'm Olivia Nunn, and this is where we rise, rebuild, and remember that storms don't break us, they reveal us. Let's get into it, and I'm here with my very good friend, Nate Boyer, who's a former Green Beret, an NFL player, TV personality, and all-around amazing veteran, good guy, all over TV, host. I mean, you pretty much do it all, Nate. So let's really jump into your story and let's start at the beginning. You were in the Army.
Yep.
You did this really cool thing called Special Operations, and then you decided that's not going to be your thing and you're going to get out. So let's start with your story there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Olivia. Good to see you too. I had, joining, I never planned on it being a career. I always just sort of thought I'd do, a few years and that would be it. And I ended up, if you count my time in the Guard as full time, which I don't, but I was in the military for 10 years because the last 4 of those were in the National Guard, Texas National Guard, while I was going back to college. So that wasn't something I foresaw doing. I think I'm grateful for it as I look back now because it helped me transition to come off active duty and to do National Guard, which is essentially part-time, and then still having the opportunity to deploy a little bit, but then eventually fully sort of wean off of the military. But didn't come without its struggles regardless, even with that. I just think I was very lucky to have that. But yeah, I did that time on active duty, and I had this lingering regret from my childhood of never playing football. I know it sounds silly, especially, I was 29 years old at that time, 28, 29. But it bothered me that I didn't do it, and I wanted to quell that regret in some way. And so I said, you know what, wherever I go to college, because I was finally felt like I was ready to go and wanted to go, versus when I came out of graduating high school, I had no interest at that time. I said, wherever I'm going to go to college, I'm just going to try out for the football team. I'll prepare for it. I'll do my best and I'll just see what happens. And if I don't make it, all good. Who cares? Life goes on. So I was actually in Iraq on my last deployment, and I started training there. I was learning, I was Googling and YouTubing, football drills and trying to put some weight on and trying to learn how to backpedal if I was going to play defensive back or run routes if I was going to play wide receiver. Because of my size, it was not a ton of positions that made sense for me. And so I started prepping there. I came back to the States. I was stationed in Colorado Springs. I was in 10th Special Forces Group. And there was the National Strength and Conditioning Association headquarters there near the Olympic Training Center. So they had these incredible facilities, and they struck an agreement with the Special Forces, with our group, their 10th group, that like the teams could come train there, and they would put us through programming. It was good opportunities for their younger trainers who would, be able to basically work with military athletes versus collegiate or professional athletes. And so I kind of latched onto that opportunity and continued to let the people know there, hey, I want to go try and play college football after this. I know it sounds crazy, but I'd love your help. How do I best prepare? And they kind of helped me get ready for it. And I ended up getting into the University of Texas.
Hook 'em.
Yeah. What's that?
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em. I got into UT, and after the first day of school, I remember going to the first day of school, and it's like, first of all the other freshmen look like children compared to me. I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm an old man. It's official. But then the next day of school was tryouts, football tryouts. So I went out to tryouts and just went as hard as I could on every drill. I just didn't want to give them a reason to cut me, and ended up making the team and eventually finding a way on the field. And and then, as you said, getting that opportunity at the NFL level, even though I only played in one preseason game, just to wear that jersey, and sign a contract, even though it was only for a few months, and compete at the highest level was really, really cool. But I do definitely owe it to my time in the military. I never would have believed in myself or known how to sacrifice and put in the work to make that dream somewhat come true.
So you just kind of walked us through one of your stories, and this story is obviously like this one pinnacle moment, right? This high. But in order to get to a high, you have a low, this breaking moment. And for you, what was this breaking moment? Because out of this breaking moment, you created this amazing nonprofit. And where did you find yourself? Where was this rock bottom moment, and how did you find yourself there?
I think the first one was before I even joined the military. Because I think I've had a few, to be honest. My life's a bit of an EKG, and so it's bottomed out a few times. But yeah, it was before, and that's what led me to the military. I was in my early 20s, and my friends that I'd grown up with were starting their lives, graduating college, maybe even starting families, and even though, and now, as you get older, you realize even those people that seem so squared away and they've got it all figured out, like they're also, lost in some ways often, or they're just they feel like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I need to do this because this is what society tells me is the norm and the path. And I think I was resistant to that out of high school and definitely rebelled from the norms. But then I also, part of me was questioning that decision because these other people seem to have a purpose, and like a sense of knowing where they belong in the world and feeling like they have something they're focused on. And I just didn't really have that. I had some interests for sure, but I just didn't know what the point was to, like, why am I here? Why was I so lucky to draw this golden ticket, of being born in the United States? And I was also double lucky because I was born into a good family. So I had like this support that most people don't get, behind me. We didn't always have a lot of money, but we had, I had two very driven parents that were that pushed me, but in a positive way, for the most part. and anyway, I just felt like I felt kind of guilty, I'm like, man, I'm just wasting. What am I doing here? So I kind of hit a low at that point in my life. And it led me to end up doing some relief work in the Darfur, which certainly changed everything for me, changed my perception, my perspective, and it changed my life. And that's what led me to wanting to join the military. And then, after doing that, and kind of coming to that, at the end of that time for me, it just felt like there was so much more I wanted to do, not better, but just different. And I also started to feel, I think, this worry that if I don't do it all now, it'll never happen. I'll be too old or something, which I now know is a myth. But I just felt that. I just, I don't know, because you hear people say that stuff all the time. Oh, I'm too old for that. I'm too old for that. Blah, blah, blah. And it's not a good excuse, but it's a pretty common one. And I think I bought into that a bit. And so I was worried, I was definitely fearful that if I don't jump on this opportunity, if I don't go to college now, I'll never go. If I don't, whatever that thing is, whatever those things are. And I started to panic a little bit. And I think that, and also, just being on deployment, and it's tough over there. You lose people, you lose relationships. I remember being deployed halfway through my first deployment. I was dating a woman, and she had dated somebody who was in the service before who had deployed, and it was tough on her. And halfway through this deployment, she just had to call it. It was just too much. And, I was very angry and then also like trying to figure out what I did wrong or how I was not enough, that she wouldn't wait a few more months. And, again, as I've aged, I kind of understand that side of things. That's also not easy, to be on the other end of that. But that really hurt. That was hard because it was hard I felt so hollow, and I didn't feel like I had a was easy to move on. It's like in the midst of, I'm already at war. We already have these challenges over here. And now I don't even have an escape, in another person that I can just talk to that, is somebody that I had strong feelings for, that's gone too. And I just felt kind of alone. And so I think out of that emptiness and that low point, middle of that deployment, was like this. I'm not sure exactly what sparked it, but maybe I just knew that I needed something to refocus on, and that was preparing for football. And it kind of carried over into so like, you look back on those things later, and you got to be maybe grateful that you got your heart broken or whatever happened. I mean, of course, you never want to be grateful for when somebody loses their life or something like that. But in that situation, like, that was sort of my way of coping, was putting all my energy into the mission we were completing over there. And then also any free time was like, I'm focusing this. My Nate time is going to be focused on football and trying to figure out how to make it on the Longhorns roster. And so, yeah, I think that was one of them. And then, also coming out of the military after I was already in college and had already made the football team, feeling a bit, again, this guilt of like, well, now I feel like I've abandoned the military a little bit. I've abandoned this mission and maybe some of my guys to go chase my dream and do something I love to do that's fun, and it's a game. And I was like, man, is that right? Like that also felt, I also felt wrong about that. And so that was also something that spurred me back into the military, is like I felt like I did want to keep serving, but also like I'm capable of it. Maybe there's a way I can do both. And just, yeah, it's a strange place to be, but ever as time progressed, and once I started playing on the field, I would get a lot of messages from people serving and people who were out of the military who were saying, man, that's so cool that you're doing that. It's an inspiration. I'm going to go chase my dream now. And then that helped me realize that, like, it's okay. It's okay to let go of the camouflage, and that identity and purpose. Like, it's not easy, but it's okay. Like, you can't do it forever anyway. And there's other things you can do, that even if they're self-serving and something like sports, it was just a passion, a dream, a fun experience, that you could still do good, with that opportunity.
There's so much that you just said in that piece that I can relate to. You talk about the loneliness, right? Like, yeah. You had somebody that you cared for, and then that person wasn't there for you. And there's that betrayal, that loneliness. And then you're trying to find yourself. And then, so you dig into you, right? And so you just invest in you, whether that's good or bad and different. And that piece kind of reminds me of, I often talk about, we are very good in the military community of this metaphorical box. We open the box, that lid, and we shove all our crap, and we close the lid. Yeah. And we do that throughout our career. And then there comes this point in our life where that lid doesn't want to close anymore. And some part of our life, or some time in our life, that lid is going to spring open, and all of that has to come through, and now you have to deal with it, right? Whether it's because you're older, or whether because there's just no more that box will hold on to. Right. And you have to come to grips with all of that, and you have to answer that mail, if you will. And for you have been able to answer some of that and give back to the community. You started a nonprofit, MVP, Emerging Vets and Players. There's been a story that's been created. You can watch that, right?
Yeah, please do.
Great show, by the way. Loved
Thank
it.
You, Olivia.
You've been able to give back. You've been able to inspire others by you chasing the other side of fear, right? By saying, I don't want to look back and say, would have, could have, should have, if I didn't answer this about what would it be like if I never stepped foot and chased my dream about being a football player, right? And you know that people have sent tons of messages to you, and I love that. So, and the other part you talked about was that there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and I love that you said that, because I think people forget when it comes to mental health that if you've survived one time from saying I'm not going to take my life, it's one and done. Because I've said that before, that I've been on the brink of saying that I'm not going to choose to be here today, and they're like, "Oh, good job, Olivia. You're done." And I'm like, actually, that's not true. I continuously battle that choice to be here is always ongoing. So I like that you said that it is a constant choice, and it is a constant thing that many of us go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you've achieved really great things, and people kind of see you. I think perception is tough these days, because not just because of social media. I don't want to blame everything on social media, because I think it's a powerful tool for good as well. But that being said, and I'm guilty of it as anybody else, like, you're picking which pictures you're going to put up and what your story and post. Usually, not always, but usually it's something that's positive and in a good light, and like you're doing something fun and maybe adventurous and all this. And I think people get in their heads, because I do it too when I look at other people's stuff, that like, this is every day. This is all the time. They are happy, quote unquote. They are in this,
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what life's like. Not like that for everybody. Most of life is pretty boring, and we often fail, and we feel like we could have done better, even though it was great. Maybe what we did, we could have done better. We're just hard on ourselves. I think vets are really hard on themselves too, because there is a standard we're expected to uphold, and there is excellence demanded of us often. And so then we demand that of ourselves continuing forward. And, life's just not like that all the time. Yeah. And it's okay. Like that is, it's helpful to understand that you're not alone in that. Like everybody struggles, man. Everybody has bad days and bad weeks and months and whatever. Like that's just the cycles of life. I was in just this last year, I had a really dark couple of months. It was tough. And, I talked to the people close to me, and I just kind of kept working towards something, kept moving. I wasn't just going to like sit around and wait for things to change. But it was just one of those seasons, just wasn't good, wasn't fun. But it's okay. And like, I look back on it now, and I'm like, I think they say this about football, about sports. When you watch the tape after the game, you go analyze the film, and you're like, oh, where could I have done better? Where could I have done worse? A common saying is, it's never as good or as bad as you thought. So like, if you thought, oh, I just played a horrible game and I screwed up on everything and blah, 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 blah. And then you go watch it, you're like, oh, well, that play was pretty good. I mean, that was all right. That wasn't as bad as I thought. And then if you think you did really, really well, it's the opposite. You're like, it's not as good as you think. Like, you go back and look at it, you're like, I say you're acting in something, and you're like, man, I crushed it. That was such a good scene. That was awesome. And then you go watch it later, you're like, that wasn't that good. Like, I could have done better. Dang it. So it's just like, that's just life, I think. And it's okay. Like, it's not easy, but it's like, it is one of those things. And as you said, you got to make that choice every day. You just got to be like, all right, I am where I am. This might be a low right now, but like, what am I going to do about it? And I have to make that choice to continue on. And then also, do my best to change, to improve the fighting position that I'm in at this point,
So for you, you said that the Army wasn't going to be a career, mm-hmm. and you wanted to chase football, and you did that. How did you end up in the realm of film and modeling and all of that? Where did that come from? Because you're doing quite well. So where did that come from? Was that any part of your blueprint?
Oh, I mean, when I was 19, I moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. So I grew up in the Bay Area, graduated from high school there, and then moved to San Diego. And I worked on a fishing boat. I took some firefighting classes. I was just searching. I just didn't want to go to college, because I just didn't. I think it was just me being pig-headed. I just didn't want to do it because my parents both were, very accomplished in school, worked really hard. They didn't come from families of high education, but they both got their graduate degrees and So I think that unintentionally, maybe I felt that pressure, as I kind of mentioned earlier, to excel in that way. And I just was like, well, what's the point? I don't even know what I want to do. Why would I go to college? So I wanted to go try things, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Even now, looking back. So I was trying things. And then, I remember, I started going to the movies more. I was spending a lot more time alone because I wasn't playing high school sports anymore. I wasn't going to school. I didn't come home to a family dinner. It was just by myself all the time. So I started going to movies, and a lot of times I'd go by myself or with a buddy. And it just kind of got sucked into the movie world, and it was so interesting to me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to move up to LA, and I'm going to pursue filmmaking, and maybe try acting, and who knows? That looks cool. That looks interesting. And so I moved up to LA, packed up my car, lived out of my car for 5 months, and until I could afford a spot, and then just got a little apartment by myself and started taking some acting classes, which was not cheap, but it was it was like $250, $300 a month. Back then, especially at where I was at in life, that was a lot of money. That was half my rent, So, so I was kind of committed to learning that and being into that. And then, 9/11 happened maybe a year after, and I didn't join the military right away, but it definitely shifted again, my perspective. I'm like, what's the point of this stuff? Why am I even doing this if there's all this going on in the world? And, but I never lost that interest. I always had that passion for it. And I kind of knew in the back of my head that one day, even if I was older, I would come back to it. And so I did. And bringing that up reminds me, I need to get more committed to it in a lot of ways, because I do miss the education. I do miss taking acting classes and doing that stuff. I miss that. I want to get back into that, but because I think it's really healthy too for me. It's a good form of therapy to express your stuff in different ways. But anyway, but yeah, so that was always there. So then when football ended, I was 34. I moved back to Los Angeles. I did an internship to finish my master's degree at a production company. Started learning about the development side of filmmaking and stuff like that. And got back into some acting classes, and then, it's certainly few and far between the jobs and the gigs, but when they do happen, it is really fun, and I'm putting myself out there in a lot of different ways and trying to do that as much as I can, because I really do enjoy it. I love storytelling, whether it's in front of or behind the camera. I love being a part of that. It is very fun. I think some of that comes from me thinking as a young person that I didn't have a story, so I want to tell other people's stories. But at the end of the day, once you get into that world, you kind of learn that, okay, maybe I'm a part of telling this story, but I'm using some of my stories and what I've experienced to make that happen. So anyway, it's fun.
I can totally relate to what you just said. I've been telling stories in my head my whole life, because I always felt like I didn't belong in any group, being biracial.
Yeah.
Being Korean and English, and, growing up in the 80s of, the assimilation culture, act white, be white, do white, and feeling like I was never enough. So I created stories in my head all the time. And I relate to what you said. Just, it's easier to tell somebody else's story, and I like doing that. And then I think the irony of all of this is that here you are with 2 degrees now. You didn't want to go to school. You felt like that wasn't your place, and here you are now, accomplished, a Welsh scholar, with 2 degrees yourself, and still wanting to, go for more. So I applaud you on that.
Yeah.
So here you are chasing after all of these things because curiosity, that sounds like you, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious for more. I want to learn more. And so what is next on the horizon? Because as you talked, you've got your highs, your lows. You are not unafraid of going on the other side of fear, right? Because everything's on the other side of fear. I've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. So for you, what is it that you want to continuously improve and or achieve as you continue on this path for yourself, this journey that you have for yourself? Because I think the one thing that I've learned in my journey is that you're never going to be too old. I think we used to feel like that. I know that when I was younger, I would say, oh man, look at those crusty old officers. And I definitely retired as an old officer. But I'm like, wait, I'm not old.
Yeah.
So what is this journey for you now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I still want to I'm trying to make movies. That's what I love to do. I loved movies. They were always such an escape for me. And whether they're documentary or scripted, like that's my thing. I mean, not that I don't enjoy TV series and don't enjoy doing other things as well. Of course I do. But I just love a whole story in an hour and a half to 2 hours, where it can kind of transport you to another place if done right. And I really do miss, and I'm guilty of not going, so I'm not being a good supporter of of theaters. Movie theaters are going away, which is really sad because it is such a cool experience. I've never gone to a movie with any of my nieces or nephews, and I'm like, I can't believe I've never done that. I regret that. Like that, I should go because I loved that as a kid. That was like my thing. I remember my dad picking me up from school, I think when I was like 6 or 7, on my birthday. He surprised me and he took off work and took me to see some terrible movie that he didn't want to see, but like that I wanted to see, you know what I mean? But like that was a special thing that I'll never forget. And so like the movie thing, it's just the challenge with it is, and you mentioned MVP, that was the first movie I directed, and we made it for we'll just say in the low 6 figures money wise, which that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Like that is, but in the movie world, that is peanuts. It's hard to make a film at a high quality movie anyway, with the equipment that you need and the labor costs, the people, it's hard to make it for, that kind of money. So that's the biggest challenge is like, who's paying for this thing? Where is that going to come from? Because I want to keep doing it. And I've got a few stories that I've been, that have been sent to me, scripts that really good scripts written, a lot of them written by veterans, that I've just gravitated towards. And I'm like, yes, we need to do this, but like, that's the biggest challenge. And that's what we're trying to uncrack, that nut, because Hollywood's tough, and it's very competitive. There's a lot of people out here pursuing it that are super talented. It's not just who you know. I know that's an old moniker people always say, it's who you know. There's truth in that, but like, you got to get to know those people too. And you also, at the same time, you've got to find a way to make stuff, even if it's not a full movie, so people can see what you're capable of, and then from there, you just keep hustling to get that done. So that's what I really want to keep doing. That is the main goal, and thing that I want to continue to pursue, because I don't see it as work. It is a job, I guess, but like, it doesn't feel like that when you're doing it. It feels very similar to the military without, bullets whizzing past your head and, or a lot of the BS that we have to kind of deal with. There's that, like the camaraderie, Murphy's Law, every day something goes wrong, and not that you want that to happen, but if you have a good plan, you're prepared for that, then everybody kind of comes together and figures it out. And at the end of the day, when you go get a beer afterwards, you're like, man, that could have been a total disaster. And like, luckily this, it's fun. It's like fun to problem solve and figure those things out and get creative. So, that whole process, I really, really enjoy. What I don't enjoy on this side of things is what I was just talking about, trying to find a way to, I can't ask people for money. I'm not good at that. Like, selling the dream is tough. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. Totally. Right. Negotiations and asking for money are not my strong suite, but I can get, you tell me your dream and I will get you there. I am a great person to drive your team.
Right.
Right. But yeah, asking for money stinks for me.
Not.
I'm a great operator.
I think that's a lot of vets. I think a lot of people in the military, because it's just not in our nature really. And it's, even if it is somewhat, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's some good salesmen that were vets too, because they're relentless, but I think a lot of us, it's just, you feel bad asking for help even, which is you should do. But like we struggle with that. So now try asking for money also for something that's maybe, there's no guarantee that investment's coming back. Like that's tough. It's a tough question to, pose to people.
You just said something that is so crucial in our conversation, asking for help.
Yeah.
That is the hardest thing, I think, in our community. I know for me, when I was at my lowest, that was the hardest words that I had to say. And I still struggle to this day saying help, right? Asking for help. And in fact, I just put a post up the other day, and you're talking about lows, right? Being in seasons of low, and this is probably one of the seasons for me. And it's the irony, right? Here I am relaunching podcast series. I was just given an award, an Icon Award, a global award just this past week. And yet, if you look at my highlight reel, it looks like I'm smiling and living this best life. But yet that's not the truth, because that's just one moment, right? This one little perfect. And as you talked about the picture perfect moment, and if you think about it, from a storytelling perspective, how many photos do you take to be able to post that picture perfect? Right? When you take a selfie, you probably take 100 selfies before you look through and you're like, no, I'm not looking perfect there. My hair's messed up here, or like the lighting. Like you take probably about 100 before you actually select one to actually post. Right. And I feel like that's the season that I'm in right now, where I'm constantly taking these selfies and none of them are right, and everything's of shades of gray instead of that perfect bright white one that I want to post. And going back to asking for help. And whether it's help or asking for money in anything that we do, I think we struggle in our community. And I just haven't been able to crack the nut on why is that? Why do we have such a struggle in saying, I need help, or can you, finance this adventure that I'm about to go on that's going to better our community?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's super interesting, because I think part of it potentially is, the idea that somebody's worse off than me, that I'm lucky, I'm pretty healthy, whatever, it's like, well, there's people that sacrifice way more than I did that we serve with, or they sacrificed it all. And it's like, we just feel like we don't deserve it, and we feel like often we don't deserve happiness. Even if we want to be happy, we feel like we still, strive for that. We still don't feel like we deserve it often, which is, it's not true. I'm guilty of it all the time as well. I'm just like, but why should I get this thing? Like I'm nobody special. I'm just, it should be somebody else that needs it more than me. And that just, there's no win there, because like the answer is, but the answers are both true. Like other person probably needs it. But you probably need it too. And maybe they don't really want it, or maybe I don't know. It's just, I think that leads to a lot of other issues in our community, because I just think we feel like we don't deserve it. We're not. And honestly, we probably felt that before we joined the military. A lot of us, and that's what led us to the military. We wanted to feel like we should earn something. We need to earn this opportunity here, or we need to earn the benefits, or whatever that is. And then that just doesn't go away after you already did that, and you took the oath, and you made those sacrifices, or were willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice even, and then you get out and we still don't feel, that way. It's crazy, but I don't have the answer, because I'm also one of those people. I think I notice it, I recognize it, but I still feel that way, and I hate that. Yeah. I don't know how to get rid of that. Yeah. It is a frustrating thing, but I will say that there's also a population, a number of our community that feel a bit entitled, I think, to a lot of stuff because they did serve, and I think that's also wrong. Nobody owes us anything. We yes, we earn benefits, but at the same time, like, we got to wait in line like everybody else for things, and nobody, in my experience anyway, I don't know anybody that was forced into their service and what they did. Like we volunteered, maybe some of those were like, they made a decision between jail and the military, but they still weren't forced. They could have gone to jail, but we volunteered to do this. And with that, yes, there are, I think, some advantages and maybe even some privileges once we get out, but still we got to we got to be willing to start in the mailroom like everybody else in this whatever the new venture is, go back to school, and it's tough, but that is part of the deal. But I think if you really work towards it, and if you really love the thing that you're doing, this is what's helped me a lot. If you really love the thing that you're doing, like I think I'll sit back and think like, man, this is so frustrating. I just keep getting no, or I keep, dealing with rejection, and feel like, I'm not exactly doing what I want to be doing. I'm running through sand and like I'm putting so much time and effort into this and I'm not seeing a result. I think that's the trap, is like getting too focused on the scoreboard and the result and like comparing to other people and all that stuff. Whereas if you really love the thing that you're doing, then as long as you're pursuing it like that, not that should be the only thing, but it should be enough. If you really do love that thing. And if it's not fulfilling, if you're doing that and you feel you're not happy in the pursuit, then maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe it's just, maybe it's only slightly off. Maybe it's not completely out of your wheelhouse, but I'll sit back and think like, what else could I do? If not this, if all of a sudden, they were just like, movies are never going to be made again. It's over for whatever reason. Like, what would that be? And I don't know what it is. I mean, there's a lot of things I would do recreationally, but I don't know what I would do for a job or like what I would try and do for work. I don't know, because this is the only thing to me that I truly love as far as a job right now. And so I'd figure it out. I'm sure I would, but storytelling, doesn't have to just be movies. It's just storytelling. Like, I just love it so much because I know how much it helped me. So,
You know what I like about you is that you have no problem calling it how it is, right? Like you are a straight shooter and you will call it out, or you'll call people out. Like one of the things you just said is that that there are people in our community that take advantage or feel that things are owed to them, which is not true.
No. And I say that because I want to caveat, because sometimes I feel that too. And I have to check myself, because I do feel that sometimes, and then I'm like, wow, dude, you little entitled SOB, like, calm down. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
But no, honestly, right? And I love that you're honest about that you are like, I have to check myself and others. And I bring this up because a part of your story in being honest and having these hard conversations is the part of the story in your football career, is the part of taking a knee. And I'm going back to the Colin Kaepernick part, right? Yeah. Where everyone just took this out of proportion, but it was a big piece. And I would love for you to have this part from you, your story as to where you were, and in the mentorship part of where you were in this piece, and why it was important for you to have this conversation with him and where you stood.
Yeah. I mean, that was a little over 9 years ago now, which is crazy. It'll be 10 years next September, I guess late August, early September, something like that. No, September. Yeah. Because it was right before 9/11, I believe, in 2016, which was also in the middle of a very divisive election. Not that the last two haven't also been very divisive, but this was the first very divisive election I remember, because, before that, it was McCain and Obama, which was a very, in a lot of ways, uniting election. People disagreed. People can, they still had their sides and their guy and like who they wanted to win. But like, man, I've been reviewing a lot of that tape recently, and just the amount of respect that John McCain had for Barack Obama, and was like, hey, if he wins, I am getting behind him, and I want him to do the best that he can, because I love this country more than anything. I love it more than me being president. That's not what it's about. Such an inspiring way to be, Anyway, this was 2016, and it was it was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and it was just, I'm not blaming either side more than the other, but it was tough. And look, all of these things, I think social media and the way life has changed and smartphones and like all of that has played a role into our division, I think. And it certainly was no excuse here. And so now it's like September of 16, and also it had been highlighted quite a bit in the news, just as today in this year, this feels like every other day there's a shooting, right? Whether it's an assassination or a school shooting, like it's terrible. You just keep seeing it, keep reading it. And you're like, when will it stop? At this time, it was a lot of the police brutality stuff that was coming out, and we were seeing a lot of it on social media. And whether it was more than other years, I honestly don't know, but it was very public and prevalent, and people were talking about it. And so Colin Kaepernick, during the preseason, this was exactly a year after I got cut from the Seahawks, and I played in the preseason in 2015. This was the preseason of 2016, and the week of 9/11, they were playing the Chargers down. They used to be the San Diego Chargers for us that are older than 9 years old or whatever. But they were playing the Chargers down there, and he was a quarterback for the 49ers. He had gone to a Super Bowl. The team was not very good for a long time, and I grew up in the Bay, so I'm a huge Niner fan. And he brought them back to out of mediocrity to an elite level of, a team that was on the verge of a championship. And so I was a big fan, he was my favorite player at the time. And that year with around, the prior years and with everything going on in the country, we'd seen a lot in the news about people like Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin and these young black people that had been, injured or killed because of some excessive force situations in the police departments. And look, I'm definitely, I'm a very middle of the road person. I'm very, I call it the radical middle today because everybody seems to be so much on the fringes. But I was like, look, I know a lot of law enforcement officers, and most of them are really good people and try their best. But just like in the military, most of us are really good people and try our best. But when things are wrong, when people do it wrong, we need to call them out and hold them accountable. And I think that's what Colin Kaepernick was alluding to, and maybe some of the language in the way that he was voicing it and protesting was just getting lost, and also maybe caused quite a reaction from people, understandably in some ways, because of the way that we perceive things differently, in our different experiences. But Colin, he was sitting on the bench. He had been sitting on the bench for a couple of games during the anthem. And he said, I'm not going to stand until things change. I don't want to stand for the flag of a country that oppresses black people and people of color. And that's what he said. And a lot of people, of course, were like, what are you talking about? This is America, the land of the free, home of the brave. Like we are a very diverse place. Yes. And all these things. But, his point was, sure, slavery's ended and the civil rights movement occurred, but like we still have a long way to go. Like, things are not perfect. There's, racism still exists. And this was an issue to him. And I didn't necessarily disagree with everything that he was saying. Maybe some of it, but not everything. And the anthem and the flag, they are special to me and special to a lot of us in the military because of our connection to it. I didn't have much of a connection to it before the military, but I've been handed a folded flag from my best friend's spouse or widow, I should say, after he passed, and carrying his casket draped in an American flag. And when I hear the anthem, I often get emotional. The one game I played in for the Seahawks, I cried on the field when the anthem played, just because it means a lot to me. And it was just, I was thinking of people like Brad and other people, and that I served with. And anyway, it just depends on who you are, So I had gotten reached out to by a lot of news agencies, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They want me to come on and debate why Colin Kaepernick is either right or wrong, and like they want to get another talking head who feels the opposite way, and like let's argue and cut to a depression medication commercial. Let's get everybody riled up and pissed off, and then sell pharmaceuticals. And it's just like I just didn't want to be a part of that, And so I ended up writing this open letter to the Army through the Army Times to Colin that just was as if I had 5 minutes with him. These are the things that I would say, and a lot of that, the basis of that was like, you are exercising your First Amendment right. This is this is the Constitution. The oath we took to defend were these things, and this is why I feel the way I feel because of some of my experiences. But I have also committed to the Special Forces motto, even after I got out of the military, which is to free the oppressed, de oppresso liber. And so, while I may not fully understand you or agree, I do respect you. And at the end of the day, I thought what he was trying to do was make things better in our country and help, help a situation that needed it, and also voice a voice for a lot of people that didn't have one. So I wrote this letter. He read it. He reached out and wanted to meet, and we met on game day before that Chargers 49ers preseason game, and we sat in the lobby of their team hotel down in San Diego, which I randomly just stayed at like a week ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm back. This is the hotel. We just sat in the lobby and had a conversation with Eric Reed, one of their other teammates who joined us. And we talked about our backgrounds and experiences and why we felt the way we felt. And it was like three guys in a locker room talking about something very serious, but in like a light manner, as if we do in the military. And when we do on sports teams, it's like, there's this kind of connection and bond you immediately have, and you just sort of get each other. And so, yeah, we just we were talking about all of those things, and it got down to the point to the actual the actions of protest, and how to do it. Not that I'm the authority, because I'm certainly not. I have no idea. But he asked me if I thought there was another way he could protest that wouldn't offend people in the military. And I said, no matter what you do, some people will be offended. Like, we are a very diverse microcosm ourselves, and we're opinionated all over the map. Like, we're not just lockstep, agree, uniform on anything. It's just the way it is. And I think that's a perception, understandable perception from a lot of society and the civilian world, that like, because we wear the same uniforms and we march a certain way, and we have our standard operating procedures or whatever those look like, that we're all just the same. Like, we're definitely not. But I said, look, I think, to me, I don't speak for the military. I don't speak for the veteran community. I only speak for Nate. I think being alongside your teammates is the most important thing. He was sitting on the bench, kind of back away from the team. And I said, that's my opinion. I think you should find a way to do that. And he said, well, I committed to not standing until something changes. And so I can't stand, And then I said, well, I guess the only other thing that makes sense is taking a knee. People take a knee to pray and propose to their future spouse. And when a player on the field is hurt, other players take a knee out of respect. So, I suggested kneeling alongside his teammates. And he actually asked me if I would kneel with him. And I considered it, to be completely honest. I considered it just because, like, it was more important for me to find a way to bring people together than it was to just do what I felt, which was, I do want to stand and put my hand on my heart when that flag plays, because I think that the flag and the anthem, they represent the possibility of how great this country can be. And I think it's still a great place. I really do. I love this place. There's a reason nobody's trying to leave. Everybody's still trying to get in, despite all of our problems, because it is a pretty special place. But we could be a lot better. We could do a lot better. There's a lot of, yes. I'm embarrassed by a lot of things still, and we don't need to read every day about some shooting again and all this stuff. It's just like, come on. So anyway, long story longer, he agreed to take a knee that night. And not even agreed. I mean, I didn't ask him to do it. I just suggested it. So he made the choice. And I made the choice to stand next to him with my hand on my heart, but showing that I co-sign on this decision. I respect what he's doing. And I respected the fact that he was willing to adjust, and find a middle ground. And, that meant a lot to me. The fact that he was willing to, because he cared about the military, folks in the military. He had a lot of respect for them. He said that multiple times, including in interviews that never or rarely made it onto a headline because it's not divisive, but it was just the truth. And anyway, that's where the kneeling began. And, it didn't solve any problems, I don't think, but I think there was a lot of people who it did change their perspective on either side of the aisle there that were like, oh, well, now maybe I'll listen a little bit. And, and then of course, when George Floyd happened 4 years later, and that was very visual, and we were all at home in lockdown, and, it continued that conversation. But I think a lot of that, what came out of after George Floyd was what had began with Colin taking a knee.
For sure. Nate, I can spend hours talking with you. You've always been a great friend. I've always enjoyed our time. Thank you for giving me a time, this hour of your time. I know you stay incredibly busy. I appreciate you spending time with me, sharing of your unbreakable storm, rising from your rock bottom, and just sharing with me, the listeners, your incredible story, and just always giving back. I'm always in awe of everything that you do. And every time that I see your next adventure, I'm just in awe, and I'm just there clapping. I think you're just an amazing person. Thank you for everything that you do.
That really means a lot. I appreciate it. Please keep telling our stories. Keep doing what you're doing, finding a way. It's super important.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Keep rising, keep speaking your truth, and always remember, you are the storm.